If you've been watching this channel for a while, then you know I am a huge fan of aluminum shells for my retro consoles, and I've done many videos showcasing them, ranging from the Game Boy Color, the original Game Boy Advance, the unhinged SP, this beautiful Raspberry Pi based emulation handheld, and of course, the Joy-Cons. So when it came to the Nintendo Switch, however, I always wanted an aluminum shell for it to go with the metal Joy-Cons. And now it looks like that's a possibility. So, let's take a look. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Tito and welcome to another episode of Retro Renew. Today I've got a really awesome mod to show you. If you know me, I absolutely love metal shells for my retro consoles. So today I got one for a more modern console, the Nintendo Switch. This is a machined aluminum shell that replaces the original plastic backplate of your Nintendo Switch. Now this mod was brought to my attention by a viewer of the channel through a post on the Macho Nacho Discord. I would have never known that this metal shell existed for the Nintendo Switch, so big thank you to Soleo1989 for sharing this mod with me. One of the more interesting things about the listing for the aluminum backplate is that it advertises that it can help dissipate heat from the Switch more efficiently, which makes sense because metal is a much better thermal conductor than plastic. But what does this mean exactly? Since it can dissipate heat more efficiently, does that mean the console could potentially run cooler? I want to see if there is a way that I could somehow test for this. So in this video, I will not only show you how to install this backplate, but I'll also attempt to see if this shell can actually make the Switch run cooler. Now the best way to accomplish this would be to somehow thermally connect the existing heatsink to the new aluminum shell, which would provide additional thermal mass to pull heat away from the console's NVIDIA Tegra SoC. And since there is an air gap between the SoC and the shell, I'll be using a thermal pad to help fill that gap and transfer heat away from the CPU and into the new aluminum shell. I'm actually really interested to see the results of that test, so be sure to stay tuned to the end of the video where I'll be comparing the original unmodified shell to the new aluminum one. Now, if you like learning about mods like this, as well as other interesting retro gaming content, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for plenty more weekly mod videos, just like this one. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to start off by showing you what's included in this kit. Then I'll demonstrate how you can easily install it yourself, run a few simple temperature tests to see if we can observe any thermal improvements, go over the pros and cons, and of course provide you with my overall thoughts. So the first item in this kit is of course the aluminum backplate itself. It is very well constructed and just looks stunning. Instead of being made of a simple stamped aluminum plate, this is a beautifully machined piece of aluminum. It has been finished properly and has an excellent anodized finish. The quality, in my opinion, is incredible. Even the holes are properly tapped and threaded to accept the included screws. And as you can see, it has Nintendo and Switch branding on the back, which is surprisingly well done. The next item in the kit are a few machine screws, which will be used in place of some of the original ones. And they also included a set of Phillips and tri-point screwdrivers to help with the installation in case you don't already have these. Oh, and lastly, included in the kit are some cat stickers? Anyway, so that's everything included in the kit. Now let me show you how you can install it yourself. Okay, so like I said guys, this is a super simple mod. First thing we gotta do is remove the Joy-Cons. Next, flip the console over and begin to remove the 4 tri-point screws at each of the 4 corners. Then lift up the kickstand, take out your micro SD card if you have one installed, and then unfasten the single Phillips screw. Great. Next, remove the 2 screws on either side of the USB-C connector on the bottom of the console. Then remove the single screw on the top next to the exhaust vent. Now proceed to unfastening the center screw on the Joy-Con rails on either side of the console. Now you can gently pry the rear shell off. We now need to transfer the kickstand and the game card cover to the new aluminum shell. First, unfasten the 2 small Phillips screws securing the kickstand. Then simply slide it out. Next, remove the single screw holding the game card cover. And then install them both onto the new metal shell. Now, I made a small mistake here. As you can see, I'm reusing the original screws when I should be replacing them with the ones provided in the kit. It's not a huge deal, but just make sure you do this. Great, now let's move our attention to the Switch console itself. We need to add a thermal pad on top of the area with the NVIDIA Tegra chip. First, prep the area by cleaning it with some isopropyl alcohol. Then, cut a piece of 1.5mm thick thermal pad material. Then, set it in place as shown. And again, peel off the other protective film. Now I can put the new aluminum backplate onto the console. Once it's firmly in place, begin screwing it all together. To do that, you must reuse the 2 original screws for the Joy-Con rails. However, you'll need to replace the one near the vent on top and the 2 on either side of the USB-C port on the bottom with new screws provided with the kit. And then reuse each of the 4 tri-point screws at each of the 4 corners. And lastly, reuse the screw under the kickstand, and you're done. So regardless of whether this aluminum backplate provides better thermals for the Switch, I have to say that it looks absolutely stunning on the console. Not only does it look fantastic, but it also feels great in the hands. There's something about holding a metal object as opposed to a plastic one. It just has an overall more premium feel. It most definitely complements the boxy pixel Joy-Cons and really finishes off the Switch perfectly. It now looks like one cohesive console. But regardless, let's see if we can observe any thermal improvements or difference with this mod installed. Now I must preface that my approach to measuring the thermal improvements, or lack thereof, is probably not the most accurate. I would actually love to hear from you all ways I can improve this test and perhaps get more accurate results, as I'd love to conduct similar tests to this in the future. So the way I went about conducting this test is by measuring the surface temperature of 2 specific areas of the Switch console using this laser temperature gun. The first is this approximate area here, which sits right above the Tegra SoC. What I'm thinking is that we should observe an increase in temperature in this region. My rationale is that more heat is being transferred from the Tegra chip to this portion of the aluminum shell. However, alternatively, we may actually see a lower temperature, indicating that the heat is being dissipated more quickly and thus resulting in a cooler surface. I unfortunately don't have a thermodynamics degree, so any insight on this from anyone who is smart on the subject would be extremely appreciated. I simply want to see if there's a difference in temperature going from the old backplate to the new aluminum one, whether that's an increase or a decrease, because I think that'll be significant. Now the other area I'll be looking at is the heat exhaust coming from the top air vent. I'm curious to see if we'll see a change in that temperature as well. Now, I did my best to normalize the results of this test by playing the same game, Breath of the Wild in this case, for about 15 minutes to get the system up to temperature. After that 15 minutes, I then took my measurements. Now, I'm sure there are other factors that will come into play, but again, this is just a very simplistic test that I'm hoping we can gain some sort of validation to the claims that the manufacturer of the shell is making. So without any further ado, let's take a look first at the Switch with its original shell. We'll first take a reading of the approximate area behind the Tegra SoC. So it looks like I'm clocking in a temperature of about 93.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's take a look at the temperature at the exhaust vent. Okay, it looks like we're getting a reading of about 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So now that we got some baseline readings, let's take a look at the Switch with the aluminum shell and the thermal pad installed, starting again with the area above the Tegra SoC. That's interesting. I honestly expected a higher temperature since I thought it would be pulling more heat away from the SoC. But it looks like perhaps my other theory of the shell dissipating the heat more quickly, resulting in a lower surface temperature, is more likely. I actually ran this test a couple times and got very similar results. However, in the grand scheme of things, we're looking at a 2-degree difference, which doesn't mean all that much and could be the result of some other variable that I'm not accounting for. Anyways, let's move on to the temperature reading coming from the exhaust vent. Alright, so we got 86.7 degrees, which again is very similar to the results of the unmodified switch. Not really sure what I was expecting to see here, but to me, this variation is in the noise. Now, I actually did run 2 more different tests. For one, I wanted to see what the temperature readings were with no shell installed at all. I'm curious to see if there's actually a difference when compared to the reading on the outer shell. I also ran another test where I placed additional thermal pads in other various locations to see if that would also make a difference. Let's first take a look at the temperature reading with no shell installed. So it looks like the temperature is actually less than with the aluminum or the original shell installed. I don't know why, but I expected it to be hotter. Okay, well, let's look at the temperature reading with the additional thermal pads installed. Here you can see where I installed them. I put a larger pad on the area that's on top of the battery, as I noticed it tends to get a little bit warmer while playing the console undocked and also while charging. I'm wondering if more heat being transferred to the shell will make the aluminum shell a bit warmer, so let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so it looks like we got a reading of about 91.4 degrees Fahrenheit. It appears to be running a bit warmer than the original mod with just the single thermal pad over the SoC, but still cooler than the original unmodded plastic shell, which measured about 93 degrees. Honestly, I'm not really sure what to make of these results. If anyone can help decipher these readings and what they could mean, please let me know in the comments below. I definitely came into this experiment with some expectations, but really they haven't materialized exactly how I thought they would. And again, I think we have to take these results with a grain of salt. There are so many factors that are difficult to normalize for that unless there were huge swings in temperature, I think we can just perhaps assume those variables may have played a role. Also, I'm just not sure if this was the best tool to use to measure the temperature, although I do think it is fairly accurate as I did test it on other objects beforehand. Needless to say, I'd love to hear from you all about potentially better ways to conduct this test, as I'm genuinely curious if this shell makes a difference at all in the thermal performance of the switch. Given the results, I'd say the difference was negligible, and really it's not clear whether there was an improvement or not. I'd like to think there was, since I was able to connect the shell to the SoC with the thermal pad, which I do believe pulls heat away from the Tegra chip. Anyway, with all the tests out of the way, let's go over the pros and cons of this kit. Starting with the pros, the construction of the shell is absolutely fantastic. The quality, fit, and finish are all very good. Additionally, this is a very easy mod to do yourself, and it includes everything you need to complete it, from the replacement fasteners to the screwdrivers, and yes, even the cat stickers. But as cute as the cat stickers are, there are a few cons, so let's go over those. First, I'm not sure we actually got a thermal performance upgrade with this shell installed. But it really isn't that huge of a deal since I think most folks are buying this kit simply because it looks amazing and not because of some supposed thermal improvement. Anyway, there really isn't much to dislike about this kit at all. I honestly think that the pros most certainly outweigh the cons. I just absolutely love the way this new backplate makes the Switch look and feel. Now at the time when I purchased this from Amazon, there wasn't a front shell available. However, there now is a front shell as well as aluminum shell replacements for the Joy-Cons. Although I must tell you that the Joy-Con shells appear to be exact copies of the Boxy Pixel ones, which is very unfortunate. So if you do want to get Joy-Con shells, I suggest purchasing them from the original designer, Boxy Pixel. I'll leave a link to his website in the description below. Now the front and rear shells, however, appear to be original designs from the company, and they come in a variety of colors, so I'll have those linked below as well. Anyway guys, that about does it for this video. I think this is an excellent mod for the Nintendo Switch, and it pairs perfectly with my Boxy Pixel Joy-Cons. If you have any questions about the mod, or know of a better way that I can measure the Switch SoC temperature for future tests like this, let me know down below in the comments. Anyway, I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, hit that like button, and check out my other social media outlets, which I'll have linked down below. Until then, see you all next Thursday.